The phone rang at 6:48 a.m., an hour reserved for death or disaster. I was spooning instant coffee into a chipped blue mug, the one James and I bought at a flea market in Oregon in 1983. The ringing jarred me, sharp and shrill, cutting through the silence of my kitchen like a scalpel. I reached for the phone with hands that trembled more than they used to, a legacy of age and decades of stress. "Mrs. Tate," said the voice on the other end, low and cautious. "This is Harold Berman. I'm James's attorney. I'm very sorry to inform you, James passed away last night." My breath caught. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "How?" I asked, though the word felt alien in my throat. "Massive heart attack. In his sleep, they think. He was found this morning by his nurse." There was a long silence between us. I watched the steam rise from my forgotten coffee. The man I once promised forever to, the one who made me laugh like no one else and cry harder than anyone ever should, was gone. "Thank you for calling," I said, and hung up before I could feel anything. No tears. Not yet. I didn't have time. The second call came less than 5 minutes later. I saw the name before I even picked up. "Lindsay." I answered. "You're not coming to the funeral," she spat. No preamble. No condolences. Her voice was venom wrapped in ice. I began, stunned, but she steamrolled me. "You don't deserve to be there. He didn't want you there. We don't want you there." A silence bloomed between us. The kind of silence that smothered everything good that ever existed between a mother and a daughter. "Lindsay," I whispered, "I was married to your father for 34 years. I loved him once. And he hated you until the day he died," she snapped. "Don't show up. If you do, I swear to God, I'll have security drag you out." Then the line went dead. I stood in my small kitchen, staring at the phone, listening to the dial tone buzzing like a wasp. My knees buckled, and I sank into the vinyl chair at the table. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Lindsay, my baby girl, the child I carried, nursed, soothed through fevers and bullies and heartbreak. The little girl who used to braid my hair while I made pancakes. Now she spoke to me like I was something she scraped off her shoe. But I wasn't surprised. Not really. Because Lindsay never knew the truth. James Tate had a smile that could sell salvation and lies in the same breath. He was all charm and cologne when I met him 9 years older, dripping confidence, with a voice like jazz and the patience of a snake. I was 20, naive. I didn't see the cracks beneath the polish until it was too late. The first time he slapped me, we were in our 3rd year of marriage. Lindsay was a toddler in the next room, watching Sesame Street. I'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. That was all. He apologized the next day, brought flowers. Said he was under pressure at work. The second time was worse. And the third. Until apologies turned into silence. And silence turned into fear. For years, I stayed. For the children, I told myself. For stability. For fear of what he might do if I left. But it was one night that changed everything. It was bitterly cold, January. I remember the frost blooming across the inside of the windows. Nathan, our son, had just turned 12. He was tall for his age, all knobby elbows and shaggy hair. James had come home reeking of whiskey, his tie askew, anger radiating off him like heat. He started in on me before he even took off his coat, ranting about bills, about my laziness, about how I made him miserable. Nathan appeared in the doorway, barefoot in his flannel pajamas, and said words I'll never forget. "Don't talk to Mom like that." James turned, his eyes bloodshot, and shoved him. It wasn't a little push. Nathan flew backward, hit the doorframe, and crumpled to the ground. I screamed. I ran. I grabbed the closest thing, a fireplace poker, raised it like a weapon. "If you ever touch my son again, I will kill you," I said. And I meant it. That was the first time I saw fear in James's eyes. He backed off, stumbled to the bedroom, locked the door behind him. The next morning, I packed a bag, took Nathan, left. I never looked back. But Lindsay, she refused to come. She was 17 and already his shadow. He'd poisoned her slowly over the years, fed her a version of reality where I was the problem. She called me a traitor, said I broke up the family. We never truly healed from that. Now, nearly 40 years later, I was forbidden from mourning the man I'd once risked everything to escape. And yet, despite everything, I felt the weight of grief, not for James, but for the life that could have been, for the daughter I lost not once, but twice. I rose from my chair, walked to the fireplace, and stared at the photograph of us, James, Lindsay, Nathan, and me, taken one summer in 1989. We looked like a family in that photo. Happy, untouched. But pictures lie. They don't show bruises. Or betrayal. The knock at the door startled me. I turned. It was a courier. A thick manila envelope. From Harold Berman. Inside was a letter. A single line in Harold's neat handwriting. We need to talk. Privately. James left you something. Something important. I sat back down, my heart thudding like a drum. James had hated me, supposedly. So why had he left something for me? Whatever it was. I had the feeling it would change everything that I stood in front of the mirror at dawn, buttoning the last clasp on my black dress with stiff fingers. The fabric, once snug, now hung slightly loose. Grief has a way of hollowing you out, even when the man in the coffin had already hollowed you long ago. I slipped on my pearls, not for James, but for myself. I needed armor. Something to hold my spine straight when my heart wanted to curl in on itself. Lindsay had warned me. No, threatened me. Don't come to the funeral. You don't deserve to be there. If you show your face, I'll have you thrown out. But James's lawyer's letter from the night before weighed heavily in my handbag, its presence like a second heartbeat. James left you something. We need to talk. I didn't need an invitation. I had history, and I had questions. I didn't walk into St. Peter's Church. I didn't want drama, not yet. I sat across the street in my car, parked beneath the skeletal shadow of a naked maple tree. I watched through the windshield as people streamed into the church, faces from another life, older now, grayer, some slower on their feet. I recognized them all. Then Lindsay arrived. She stepped out of a black town car like royalty emerging from a chariot. Her posture was flawless, her lipstick immaculate. She wore a wide-brimmed hat and a black silk coat cinched at the waist, as if grief were something you could tailor. At her side was her husband, Adam, silent, as always. His face was set in that unreadable mask I'd grown used to over the years. A man who made you feel like you owed him something just for breathing near him. They walked in together, the perfect grieving couple. I waited until the doors closed, then drove slowly to the cemetery. Greenwood Cemetery was a sea of winter-kissed grass and bone-white headstones. A gray sky sagged low overhead, heavy with the threat of rain. The air tasted like iron. I stayed back, hidden beneath a gnarled elm tree whose branches rattled in the breeze like bones. From there, I watched the final part of the service. The priest read from Psalms with a practiced gentleness. A choir of crows loitered on a nearby headstone, watching. Then came the lowering of the casket. James Tate, husband, father, charmer, tyrant. Lindsay stood closest to the grave. Her face was porcelain flawless, unreadable. She held a single white rose in her gloved hand and dropped it into the hole like it weighed nothing. When the priest said amen, the guests began to peel away in ones and twos. That's when she saw me. Lindsay's eyes locked on mine from 30 yards away. Her face changed. She shoved her gloves into Adam's hands and marched straight toward me, each heel strike on the gravel path like the ticking of a bomb. Well, she said, stopping just inches from me, you just couldn't help yourself. I said nothing. I wasn't ready to swing yet. I told you not to come. I told you this day wasn't about you. I stayed away from the church, I said evenly. I didn't speak to anyone. I just wanted to say goodbye. She laughed, sharp and humorless. You don't get a goodbye. You forfeited that right the day you abandoned us. The day you left him. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. I left him to protect Nathan. Or do you not remember that night? Don't you dare bring Nathan into this. Her voice rose. You were weak. You couldn't handle being a wife. You couldn't handle being a mother. You were nothing but a storm we all had to survive. People were staring now. Isn't that his ex-wife? Someone whispered. She shouldn't be here, another muttered. I could have walked away, but I was done being silent. I was the storm. I said, my voice low but sharp as glass. I was the one who bandaged Nathan's bruises. Who fed you while your father disappeared for days on benders? I was the one who kept the lights on while he spent every penny on liquor and charm. Lindsay's face reddened with fury. He was a better father to me than you ever were, Mother. And yet, he never once told you the truth, said a new voice. We both turned. It was Harold Berman, James's lawyer. Tall, gray-haired, and flanked by a leather briefcase and the quiet confidence of a man who'd seen too much. Miss Tate, he said, addressing Lindsay with clipped politeness, there's something you should know. I don't want to hear it. Your father left instructions, Harold interrupted smoothly, his voice loud enough for every lingering mourner to hear. His will is to be read tomorrow. And he made one specific condition. He turned to me. She must be there, he said. Tiffany must be present for the reading. His words, not mine. Lindsay's eyes went wide. What? She spat. It's legally binding. If Tiffany isn't present, the will becomes invalid. That was his request. Explicit. Undeniable. You're lying, she hissed. He hated her. He wouldn't, then perhaps you didn't know him as well as you thought. The words landed like thunder. Lindsay swayed slightly. Her husband moved to steady her, but she pushed him away. I can't believe this, she said, her voice brittle with disbelief. She's manipulating even from the grave, no, Harold said, cool as ice. Your father's hand is all over this. I have the recordings, the dates, the signatures. He was of sound mind. Lindsay's fists clenched. This isn't over. I know, I replied. It's just beginning. She stared at me for a long, venomous moment before storming back toward the gravesite, her heels gouging the soft earth with each furious step. Harold turned to me, his voice softening. 10 o'clock tomorrow. My office. And bring that envelope I sent you. I nodded, still frozen beneath the tree. In the distance, I watched my daughter, my only child, clutch her father's headstone like it could explain everything she didn't understand. The conference room smelled like old paper and sharper things, varnish, ink, regret. The kind of room where things were signed, sealed, and never unsaid. I sat at the far end of the table, next to a tall window that framed the gray skyline like a funeral portrait. Outside, traffic murmured. Inside, everything was taut and still. Lindsay arrived in a flurry of black wool and contempt. Her heels clicked like accusations on the tile floor as she entered, chin high, eyes already set on me like a target. She didn't greet me. She didn't even look directly at me. She took her seat with the poise of a woman expecting to inherit everything. Adam followed her in silence, settling beside her like a shadow that had long since given up casting his own light. Then the door opened once more. Nathan. He looked different, older, heavier in the eyes, but still my son. His beard was fuller now, his suit slightly wrinkled, his tie askew like it had been knotted in a moving car. He nodded at Harold, then, almost imperceptibly, at me. My hands, folded in my lap, trembled just a little. Harold Berman entered last, clutching a wooden box and a thick cream envelope sealed with wax. His eyes swept the room, grave and unreadable, the same way a priest might look before delivering last rites. Thank you all for coming, he said quietly, placing the box at the head of the table. As executor of James Tate's estate, I'm here to carry out his final instructions. But before any discussion of assets or disbursement, Mr. Tate left something more personal. He held up the envelope. The wax seal cracked like a joint popping from its socket as he peeled it open. He wanted this read aloud, Harold said. To all of you. With no interruptions. Lindsay scoffed softly, but said nothing. Harold unfolded the letter. And James's voice filled the room, shaky, imperfect, and devastating. To my family, the letter began. If you're hearing this, I am gone. And if you're sitting at that table, I need to say what I should have said a long time ago. A pause. Harold's eyes skimmed ahead, his brow tightening. Tiffany, if you're there, I know I don't deserve it. Not your presence, not your forgiveness. But I need you to hear me anyway. Because I lied. Because I let you carry blame that was never yours. My breath caught. I didn't blink. Lindsay's foot tapped sharply beneath the table. "You didn't destroy our marriage." "I did. And I did it long before you walked out." Harold paused only for air and continued. "The night everything changed, I came home drunk. Angry. I barely remember the argument. I just remember the rage. The smell of gin on my own breath. The way the room spun when Nathan stepped between us. Across the table, Nathan stiffened. He was 12. He was scared. And he told me to stop. I pushed him so hard he hit the wall. He crumpled to the floor like a rag doll. The sound of his body against the door frame still wakes me up at night. The silence in the room was total. Even Lindsay had stopped tapping. Tiffany screamed. I'd never heard her voice like that. She grabbed the fireplace poker and raised it like she meant to use it. And for the first time, I realized how much she feared me, how far I'd fallen. Harold's voice faltered slightly as he read. She didn't leave because she was weak. She left because she was the only one in that house strong enough to break the cycle. She didn't run away. She saved our son. And I let her take the fall. I could hear Lindsay's breath now, fast, uneven. Lindsay, I know you've always blamed your mother, but I made you believe a version of the story that made me the victim. I never corrected you. I was too ashamed, too cowardly. But it was never her. It was me. And I am sorry. Harold stopped. The letter dropped slightly in his hands. No one spoke. Lindsay blinked slowly, like she was trying to wake from a bad dream. That's not, her voice cracked. That's not what happened. Her voice grew louder. He would never say that. That's not what I remember. It's what I remember, Nathan said quietly. Lindsay turned toward him sharply, like she'd just noticed he was in the room. What? She whispered. He looked at her steadily. His jaw tightened. I remember the sound, he said, of my own back hitting that damn wall, of Mom's scream, of the poker scraping the bricks. I never forgot. I just never said anything. He glanced at me, and something passed between us. The truth finally spoken aloud. I didn't want to make it worse, he added. But Dad wasn't lying. He did that. Lindsay's mouth opened, then closed. Her face, usually so composed, crumbled for one raw second before she masked it again. You've been brainwashed, she snapped. Both of you. This is her doing. Harold folded the letter and tucked it carefully back into the envelope. This letter was written by James, witnessed, and recorded on video. We also have a digital timestamp and his signed statement. He looked at Lindsay gently. This wasn't written in anger or confusion. It was composed, deliberate. I don't believe you, she whispered. I won't believe you. That's your choice, Harold said softly. She turned to Adam. Say something, she hissed. Adam said nothing, just looked down at the table. She stood, her chair scraping the floor like a scream. This is a setup, a circus. She's manipulating you all. And if you think I'm going to sit here while she plays the victim, you don't have to stay, Harold interrupted, his tone now cool steel. But I would advise you to remain. There's more. About the will. Lindsay hesitated, then sat down, her body rigid with fury and confusion. I remained still. For once, I didn't need to fight. The truth was doing the work for me. The second envelope was thicker, weightier. Harold Berman opened it like a priest revealing scripture, slow, reverent, absolute. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, but inside the room, silence reigned. Even Lindsay sat motionless, coiled like a spring, barely blinking. She was waiting. She thought the letter was the worst of it. She had no idea. Harold adjusted his glasses and began reading, his voice even unshakable. I, James Michael Tate, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my final will and testament. The following decisions are made freely, without coercion, and with complete awareness of their consequences. Lindsay sat taller. I saw her fingers twitch, her eyes glitter with anticipation. Harold continued. To my son, Nathan Tate, I leave the house at 327 Elm Ridge Drive, including all furnishings, land, and possessions within. I was never the father he needed me to be, but he has become a man I'm proud of, despite me. May this home offer him the peace I never could. Nathan's mouth tightened, but he didn't speak. His hands curled into fists on his knees, then slowly relaxed. To my wife, Tiffany Tate, Harold looked directly at me. I leave full ownership of Tate's Auto Repair, including all tools, vehicles, client lists, and future revenue. She helped build that shop with her patience, her sacrifice, and her silence. For years, she held up the foundation of a family I was too selfish to protect. Lindsay's nails dug into the leather armrest beside her. Her face didn't move, but I saw the tremor in her throat. In addition, I bequeathed to Tiffany the sum of $100,000 from my personal savings. This is not a gift. It is a repayment. For the years she spent cleaning up my messes, bandaging our children, and hiding bruises that should have belonged to me. I gasped softly. The room blurred for a second. 100,000. Not a reward. A debt. And in naming it that way, James had finally seen me. To my grandchildren, Ellie and Sean Tate, I leave $50,000 each in educational trusts to be administered by Tiffany. I hope they use it to build lives free of fear, lives filled with the kind of strength and kindness their grandmother showed every day. Harold took a measured breath. To my daughter, Lindsay Tate, the room froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving. I leave $1. It landed like a gunshot. Lindsay blinked. This is not a mistake. This is not an oversight. This is deliberate. I give her $1 as a symbol of what she has earned, blind loyalty to a lie. May it remind her that cruelty defended is cruelty inherited. Harold folded the page slowly, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet room. Lindsay didn't move. Not at first. Then she laughed, a single, sharp bark. It echoed too loudly in the room. $1, she said hoarsely. He left me $1? It's legal, Harold said calmly. And binding. She stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. This is a joke. This whole thing is AF. It's not, Nathan said, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. It's the truth. And you know it. You knew about this? She hissed at him. You all knew. We heard it with you, he said. We just listened. Her eyes snapped to me. This was your doing. You turned him against me. I didn't turn anyone, I said quietly. Your father wrote this himself. Signed, sealed, and witnessed. He spoke for himself. Her hands were shaking. I'll contest it. You're welcome to try, Harold said. But per James's instructions, any attempt to challenge this will void the grandchildren's trusts. Ellie and Sean would lose everything. Lindsay's face cracked. She looked at her children, sitting silently in the corner. Tell them it's not true, she whispered. Tell them you want to come home. Ellie stood slowly, like someone standing up from a burden. She looked her mother straight in the eye. We're not going back with you. Sean stood too, arms crossed. We want to stay with Grandma. Lindsay's mouth opened. No sound came out. You're just confused, she said finally, her voice trembling. You're upset. You'll change your minds. No, Ellie said firmly. We've already changed them. She turned to me. Can we come with you? Please. I nodded, unable to speak, my eyes stinging. Lindsay took a step back, her world crumbling around her. Adam didn't move to help her. He stared at the floor like a man who wanted to disappear. Harold stood, respectful but firm. We're done here. Lindsay turned one last time to me. You stole them, she whispered. You stole everything. No, I said softly. I simply survived. That evening, my house was filled with the sounds of life. Ellie unpacked in the guest room, stringing fairy lights across the bed frame. Sean found an old box of board games and insisted we all play Monopoly. Nathan helped fix the front porch light that hadn't worked since spring. It was warm, loud, joyful. I watched them from the doorway, the hum of laughter washing over me like music I'd forgotten the tune to. I didn't need millions. I didn't need revenge. I had my son. I had my grandchildren. And I had peace. The kind of peace you only earn after you've walked through fire barefoot and come out whole on the other side. James had taken everything from me once. But in the end, he gave me back the one thing I never expected. Justice. The house felt like it was listening. It always did after a storm, the kind of storm that didn't blow from clouds, but came in the form of voices and names and truths too heavy to hold. After the will. After the fight. After Lindsay's face twisted with disbelief. After Ellie and Sean whispered, "Can we stay with you?" Now it was just me and the echo of everything that had been said. I set my keys down on the entry table and shrugged off my coat, the sleeves catching on my sweater like the house didn't want to let me go yet. The quiet was deep, not empty, but aware. Every tick of the clock in the hallway sounded like a heartbeat. I made tea out of habit, not desire. Mint. Steam curled from the mug as I walked into the kitchen and saw the box on the table. I had almost forgotten. Nathan had handed it to me in the parking lot of the lawyer's office. It was small and unassuming, wrapped in brown paper with my name scrawled across the top in James's unmistakable handwriting, tight, slanted, masculine. "He left this for you," Nathan had said, not meeting my eyes. Said to give it to you alone. At the time, I couldn't bear to open it. Not with Lindsay hissing accusations. Not with the air so thick with broken illusions. But now I was ready. I peeled back the tape slowly. The cardboard creaked as it opened, like it had been holding its breath. Inside, wrapped in a strip of soft, blue velvet, was a small, slightly dented ring box. Next to it, a letter. The paper was folded neatly, the edges slightly worn, like it had been handled again and again before being sealed. I opened the ring box first, and there it was. My wedding ring. The one I took off the morning I left him. I had set it on the windowsill of our bedroom, shaking as I packed my things, heart racing, eyes stinging. I thought I'd never see it again. I'd assumed it was swept away with the dust of our divorce, thrown into a drawer or pond or forgotten. But he'd kept it. I ran my thumb across the inside of the band. It was still warm somehow. I imagined his hands, older now, frail near the end, holding this ring between his fingers, maybe remembering the girl he married. The girl I used to be. Then I unfolded the letter. The paper was thick, the ink slightly smudged in places. James's script was familiar, but shaky now, as if written in pain or regret. Or both. "Tiff, I don't know what to say to make this right. I think that's why I waited so long. I kept thinking the right words would come, that the guilt would soften. That time would make me braver. It didn't. So this is what I have. A letter, a ring, and a truth I never gave you. I wore my wedding band for 3 years after you left. Not because I thought you'd come back, but because I couldn't pretend I hadn't loved you. I couldn't pretend you hadn't been my beginning, my best, my anchor in all that chaos. You were always better than me. That's not a compliment. That's a fact. You were stronger, kinder, more patient. You stayed longer than anyone else would have stayed. And when you left, it wasn't because you gave up. It was because I had already destroyed what we had. The night I pushed Nathan, that was the end. You were right to threaten me. You were right to shield him. That night plays on repeat in my head sometimes, like a film I can't stop rewinding. I see his body hit the wall. I hear your scream. And I remember thinking, she's going to kill me. I wish you had. But you didn't. You walked away. And you took the truth with you. You let everyone believe the worst of you if it meant protecting our children from the worst of me. You bore the weight of my lies without ever fighting back. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm not even asking for it. I'm only asking that you understand. That I loved you. From the first time you laughed at one of my stupid jokes. From the first morning I saw your hair tangled on my pillow. From the way you stood between me and our son like a wall of flesh and fury. I loved you, even when I was too broken to show it. I kept your ring because I never stopped feeling married to you. Not in the legal sense. In the way that mattered. In the way that haunted me. So I give it back to you. Not as a symbol of our marriage, but as a mark of your survival. You endured me, and still became someone I could never measure up to. You are the bravest person I ever knew. I'm sorry. For all of it. For everything. James the First read it 3 times. The first time I read it as the woman who had once loved him. The second, as the mother who had built walls to protect her son from him. The third, as the woman I had become, older now, weathered, but finally seen. I didn't cry. Not right away. The tears came slowly, like rain after a long drought, gentle at first, then relentless. I clutched the letter to my chest and looked at the ring, gleaming dully in the low kitchen light. I slid it onto my finger, not as a promise, but as a memory. Not to bind me to the past, but to honor the girl who once believed in love, and the woman who walked through hell to find herself again. I whispered into the silence, "I understand." And for the first time in decades, I meant it. The garage still had his name on it. Tate's Auto Repair, painted in once bold red letters across a white wooden sign, now sun-bleached and chipped at the edges. A crooked A dangled slightly askew, like it had grown tired of holding up the name it spelled. I stood in the gravel lot, keys in hand, the cold biting through my coat, my breath curling in the winter air. The building looked like it had exhaled a long sigh when James died, and now, for the first time in decades, it was waiting. For something new. For me. Everyone had expected me to sell it. Even Nathan. "You don't have to keep it, Mom," he'd said gently, flipping through a manila folder filled with valuation documents. "You could sell, pocket a good chunk of change, and never think about it again. Start over somewhere warmer. Maybe Arizona." But I didn't want warm weather. I wanted purpose. "I'm not selling," I told him. "This shop ate 20 years of my life from the shadows. The least it can do is give something back." It wasn't about pride. It was about reclamation. The garage had been James's kingdom, his sanctuary, his escape, his excuse. I used to joke that he spent more time with carburetors than with his kids. It wasn't far from the truth. But beneath the grease and grit and the years of neglect, I saw something that could grow. Not for James. For us. I wasn't going to run it, not directly. I knew my limits. But I could own it. Could hire someone who respected the place and its people. That someone was Pete. Pete had worked at Tate's Auto since I was still changing diapers. He was 50, balding, soft-spoken, and loyal to a fault. James had underpaid him for decades. "You sure about this?" Pete asked, wiping his hands on a rag, standing under a lifted Mustang the first time I walked into the shop alone. "I'm sure," I said. "You keep the shop running. I'll keep the books clean and the lights on." He stared at me for a long beat. Then he nodded, the corner of his mouth twitching into something that might have been a smile. About damn time. We cleared out the clutter. I tossed James's ratty recliner, the one he used to collapse into between shifts like a drunken king. I replaced the office's cracked full-leather chairs with a fresh set I picked up on discount. I added a coffee pot that wasn't a biohazard and a new calendar above the desk. Ellie and Sean helped scrub the windows. Nathan patched up the garage's back wall, where years of vibration had knocked the drywall loose. And I hung a photo of the three of them, my son and his kids, right beside the appointment board. My days found rhythm again. I'd arrive at the shop by 9 a.m. every Tuesday, a box of bagels in one hand, an invoice folder in the other. Pete would grunt a greeting, the young apprentices would nod respectfully, and I'd sit at the corner desk and balance the numbers. I never imagined I'd find satisfaction in torque specs and quarterly ledgers, but I did. And on Fridays, I'd close the garage early. Ellie and Sean would wait outside on the bench, backpacks at their feet, ready for the walk home. We'd pass the bookstore, the donut shop, the tiny park where I first taught Nathan how to ride a bike. "Grandma," Sean asked once, "do you like your job now?" I thought about it. About how I used to wake up with dread in my bones, knowing James was out drinking, knowing the bills were unpaid, knowing Lindsay's coldness would grow another layer that I couldn't thaw. And now? Yes, I said. I really do. The money from the will made things easier, but it wasn't what gave my life meaning. It was where it went. I paid the first semester of Nathan's mechanical engineering degree with a quiet pride that hummed in my chest like a tuned engine. I watched his shoulders straighten with every passing week, his eyes light up as he talked about coursework, machines, ideas that weren't just theory, but his. I bought Ellie a laptop for her honors program and tutored her on essay formatting with a cup of cocoa in her hand. I paid for Sean's robotics club, drove him to meets, sat in the bleachers with tears in my eyes when his team took home third place. The house, my house, was no longer silent. It echoed now, with laughter and slammed doors and burned pancakes and music played too loud on Saturday mornings. I planted tulips by the mailbox. I put wind chimes on the porch. I started sleeping through the night. One afternoon, as I was locking up the shop, I looked at the ring of keys in my hand. There was one for the shop, one for the safe, one for the office, one for the little back gate where the kids liked to sneak in. And for the first time, I realized something. I was no longer a woman with a wedding ring. I was a woman with a keyring. And every key opened something that was mine, something I'd earned, something no one could take from me, not James, not Lindsay, not time. It was Sunday evening, and the table was set for 5, but fate brought 6. I'd spent the day preparing, each task a kind of ritual, marinating tomatoes, layering noodles, setting out cloth napkins in the dusty blue I'd once used for Nathan's christening. The scent of garlic and rosemary lingered in the house like memory. The radio played soft jazz in the background, filling the silence that used to feel like loneliness but now felt like space. Ellie had arranged the table. Sean had insisted on polishing the cutlery, like they do on TV. And Nathan, my son, my quiet anchor, was stirring a pot of homemade sauce with a focused tenderness that reminded me of the boy he used to be. At 6:05, the doorbell rang, and everything changed. Lindsay stood there in her navy coat, shoulders squared, jaw set like marble. In her hands was a plastic bakery box of pie from a store that charged triple for authenticity. Her eyes met mine, cool and unreadable. Next to her stood Madeline, 16 now, taller than I remembered. Her dark hair curled slightly around her collar, and her eyes held that unmistakable Tate Storm, sharp, observant, older than they should be. "Hi," she said. My heart jumped. "Hi," I answered, surprised my voice didn't tremble. Lindsay cleared her throat. We were in town. She asked to come. Madeline shot her a look, one that said, "Don't lie. Not tonight." I stepped aside. "Come in." Dinner was a study in tension. The clinking of silverware was louder than the conversation. Every laugh sounded a bit too forced. Every question carried the weight of years behind it. Lindsay sat across from me, her back impossibly straight, as if the chair might tip over if she relaxed even a fraction. Madeline sat between Ellie and Sean, who whispered and giggled and passed bread like diplomats negotiating a ceasefire. It had been years since we'd all been at the same table. The last time, James had yelled at Sean for spilling juice, Lindsay had stormed out after I corrected her grammar, and Ellie had burst into tears in the bathroom. That was before the truth came out, before the will, before the letter. But tonight, something felt different. Not safe, not easy, but possible. "This sauce is amazing," Madeline said, breaking the silence. "Grandma's secret recipe," Ellie said brightly. "Used to make it for fundraisers at church," Nathan added. "She made it for Dad once when he was sick," Sean said, chewing. "He said it cured him faster than antibiotics." Lindsay's fork paused midair. "She was good at that," Nathan said, eyes fixed on his plate. "Taking care of us when someone else should have." A long silence. The air stretched taut across the table like plastic wrap over a casserole. Madeline looked at me. "Did you really save his life?" My heart stuttered. Nathan looked up. She did. Lindsay's throat moved, but no words came out. Ellie, gently but firmly, added, "He told us what happened. Before he died." Sean nodded. "He said you were the reason he got to grow up." Madeline blinked slowly. "I never knew that. I just thought you left." "I did," I said, keeping my voice even. "But not the way your mother thought I did." Madeline turned to Lindsay. "Did you know?" Lindsay pressed her lips together. She looked like she was deciding whether to detonate or retreat. "I know now," she whispered. After dinner, the kids cleared plates and escaped to the living room, leaving Lindsay and me in the kitchen. We stood on either side of the sink, just like we used to. Me washing, her drying. Only this time, she wasn't 12 and I wasn't silent. She dried a plate, slowly, methodically. "I didn't come to apologize," she said. "I didn't expect you to." She paused, wiped the same plate twice. "I'm not sure I know how." "That's fine," I said. "Start by not lying." She flinched, then nodded. "They don't believe me anymore," she said, almost to herself. "Everything I told them about you, everything I repeated about Dad, it's like it cracked. And now they look at me like I'm a stranger." "You gave them a story," I said. "Now they're meeting the truth." She swallowed hard. Do you hate me? No, I said. I hated what you believed. But I never hated you. Her voice shook. I don't know how to fix it. You don't, I said. You just stop trying to paint over the cracks. You let them see them. You let yourself see them too. She nodded again. Slower this time. She looked tired. Not in the way sleep fixes, but the kind of tired that comes from carrying a lie too far, too long. Madeline wants to come again, she said. I'd like that. I don't want her to hate me. Then start being someone she doesn't have to unlearn. She set the last dish in the rack and looked up at me. Can we try again? I didn't answer with words. I handed her a clean plate. She dried it. And that was enough. The rain came down like a whisper that morning, soft but steady, tapping against the kitchen window as if asking to be let in. Outside, the trees stood still, drenched and dripping, their leaves weeping gently into the wind. I sat at the old oak table, the one James had once threatened to chop into firewood during a particularly bitter winter. I'd sanded and restained it myself the year he moved out. Now it was a warm honey color, worn smooth by time and elbows and coffee cups. I held one now, a chipped ceramic mug with a faded sunflower on the side, lukewarm tea sloshing gently inside. The house was quiet. Not heavy, not hostile, just still. Like it was listening. I heard footsteps. Slow, measured, careful as though each step came with a question attached. Lindsay appeared in the doorway. She didn't look like the woman who used to arrive at Christmas with perfectly wrapped gifts and polished boots. She looked like the child I used to tuck in barefaced, vulnerable, caught in the in-between of fear and honesty. She wore a soft gray sweater stretched too long in the sleeves, leggings, and socks that didn't match. But it wasn't the clothes. It was her eyes. Haunted, bloodshot, raw. She held a manila folder close to her chest like it was all that tethered her to this world. Can I sit? She asked, voice smaller than I remembered it ever being. I nodded. She crossed the room without another word and slid into the chair across from me. She placed the folder on the table, then stared at it like it might detonate. I stayed up all night, she said finally, her voice hoarse. I read everything. Twice. I waited. The will. The notarized statements. The letter Dad wrote. His medical records. The journal entries Harold sent. I even pulled the ER report from the hospital's archives. And I had a forensic consultant authenticate his handwriting. She looked up at me, her eyes shining with some terrible mixture of shock, grief, and shame. It's all real, she whispered. Every goddamn word. I didn't speak. She pressed her lips together, shaking her head slowly. I thought I would find something. One inconsistency. A smudge, a typo. Something I could use to say it wasn't true. That you made it up. That Nathan lied. That it was all just a mistake. I saw the struggle in her, an entire belief system unraveling inside her chest. But it wasn't, she choked out. It's real. You were telling the truth. All those years. I folded my hands in my lap. I never wanted you to find out like this. She opened the folder with trembling fingers. The papers inside were neat, organized, underlined in pink and blue and yellow. Like color coding would somehow make them easier to digest. This is from the night Dad pushed Nathan, she said, sliding a photocopy toward me. 6 years old. Broken ribs. No one pressed charges. But it's there. I nodded. I knew. I'd been the one holding Nathan's tiny hand as he whimpered in the ER, staring down a nurse who didn't know whether to call social services or the police. I remember thinking you were the monster, Lindsay said. I told my friends my mom abandoned us. Thus she ran away. Thus she was selfish. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, but the tears kept falling. They left tracks on her cheeks like the rain outside, unrelenting and honest. I was cruel to you, she whispered. I told your grandchildren you didn't care. I painted you as cold, vindictive, ungrateful. You believed what he told you, I said softly. I wanted to believe it, she snapped, the bitterness aimed at herself. I needed him to be the hero. I needed someone to blame when everything else fell apart. And blaming you was easier than facing what he really was. She looked up at me, voice barely audible. I built my life on a lie. No, I said. You built it on what you were handed. That's not the same thing. She exhaled, slow and shaky. I don't know who I am without him. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. You're still my daughter. She didn't pull away. I thought you'd hate me, she whispered. I shook my head. Hate is heavy. I've carried enough of it. She blinked fast, her mouth trembling. Do you forgive me? I was quiet for a moment. I don't think that word is big enough, I said. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a process, and you don't have to earn my love. It's always been there, even when it hurt. I hurt you. Yes, I said, but I know why. We sat in silence for a moment. Not the awkward kind, the sacred kind. Madeline asked about you last night, Lindsay said suddenly. She wants to see you again. I'd like that. She doesn't look at me the same way anymore, Lindsay said quietly. I think she's starting to see through the myths too. Then she's growing, I said. And so are you. Lindsay swallowed, then leaned back in her chair, looking exhausted, like she'd finally stopped running and realized how far she'd come. What now? She asked. I gave her hand one last squeeze, then stood and poured her a fresh cup of tea. Now, I said, setting the cup in front of her, we tell the truth. And we see what grows from it. Some truths arrive like wrecking balls, brutal, loud, devastating. But others seep in like fog. Soft, relentless, unavoidable. Lindsay didn't forgive me. Not that week. Not even close. But she didn't leave. And that meant something. She lingered in the house like a restless spirit, pacing the floors, rearranging the same stack of books on the coffee table, opening drawers and shutting them again as if hoping some hidden answer would present itself. Her footsteps echoed like questions. Her silences weren't cold, but dense, full of unsaid things like air before a thunderstorm. The folder of documents followed her everywhere. I saw it on the kitchen counter in the morning, next to her tea, on the armrest of the couch while she half-watched reruns, balanced on her lap at night when she sat curled up in the armchair, highlighter cap tapping against her bottom lip. She was studying her life like it was a crime scene, because it was. And she was both witness and accomplice. We didn't talk about the past directly, not every day, but it slipped into our conversations like secondhand smoke. One afternoon, as we folded laundry in silence, she said, he used to buy me chocolate milkshakes every Friday after school. He'd let me sit in the front seat and turn the radio up as loud as I wanted. I glanced up, watching her fold one of Sean's hoodies. He did that, I said. And I used to think, she continued, that you were just jealous. Because he was fun and you were rules. I didn't respond. She folded another shirt. Slowly. Precisely. But now I wonder, maybe he was overcompensating, distracting me from what was happening when I wasn't there. I set down the dish towel in my hands. Maybe he was both, I said. A man who loved you, and a man who didn't know how to love anyone the right way. She didn't speak after that, just picked up another shirt and kept folding. Another evening, I found her standing in front of the hall mirror, the same one that had hung in our entryway for decades. She was staring at her reflection with a strange intensity, her fingers tracing the edge of the frame. I look like him, she said when she saw me behind her. I stepped closer, peering into the mirror beside her. Your eyes are mine, I said. But your fire? That's him. She laughed, but it was brittle. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything, I said. You just have to live with it. She turned to me, arms crossed. I spent my entire life wanting to be just like him. Now I'm terrified I succeeded. I stepped forward and put my hands on her shoulders. You're not him, Lindsay. How do you know? Because you're standing here, questioning, unraveling. That's something he never did. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. So I hugged her. She didn't hug me back at first, but she didn't pull away either. The children noticed. Ellie started whispering less, watching more. Sean asked his mother to help him with a school project, something he hadn't done since kindergarten. Even Madeline, when she came by on the weekend, hugged her mother goodbye longer than usual, hesitant, but real. Lindsay seemed startled by it all. As if affection had become a foreign language she was afraid she no longer spoke. One night, well past midnight, I heard footsteps again, bare feet this time, soft on the creaking hallway floorboards. I opened my bedroom door to find her in the dark, standing like a child outside the nurse's office, unsure if she was sick enough to ask for help. "I can't sleep," she whispered. I stepped aside and gestured toward the couch. But instead, she followed me into the kitchen. We sat at the table, lit only by the dim light above the stove. I poured us both chamomile tea, neither of us touching it. She stared at her hands. "I want to forgive you," she said. "I do. But there's a wall. I built it so high." I nodded. "I know. And part of me, God, it's ugly, but part of me still wants to protect him. Even now, even knowing." "That's not ugly," I said gently. "That's grief." She swallowed hard. Her throat bobbed in the light. "I feel like I lost him twice. Once when he died, and again when I found out who he really was." "You didn't lose him," I said. "You just saw him without the lighting. The stage is dark now, that's all." She let out a breath. It shook. "I hate what he did to you." "I did too. And I hate what I did to you." "I know. I'm sorry." I reached across the table and took her hand. She held it tightly, her grip strong and cold and desperate. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "Not from you. Not even from myself. I'm not offering it as a reward," I said. "It's not a door prize. I love you whether you come to forgiveness or not, whether you walk the path or sit on the edge of it." Tears streamed down her face silently. "I just don't know if I'll ever feel whole again." I squeezed her hand. Maybe wholeness isn't the goal. Maybe it's just peace. We sat there a long time, long enough for the tea to go cold again, long enough for her to lay her head on the table, tear-stained cheeks against her sleeve, long enough for me to know that the worst had passed, not ended, but passed. And something like healing had begun, not with banners, but with breath. Lindsay left on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that pretends to be spring, sunlight filtered through pale clouds, birds making hesitant returns, the air still cold enough to bite through a sweater. Her car was already packed when I came outside. 2 suitcases, a garment bag, Madeline's duffel tossed across the back seat like a reluctant afterthought. She stood at the driver's side, arms folded, chin lifted, not defensive, just resolved. "I think it's time," she said. She didn't make eye contact. Her eyes followed a bird hopping across the gravel. I nodded slowly, hands buried deep in the pockets of my coat. "You don't owe me an explanation." Her lips parted, just slightly, but she didn't speak for several seconds. Then she said, low and without embellishment, "It's not that I don't understand. I do now. I see everything clearly. What he did, what you carried, what I refused to see." She turned toward me, finally. "But that doesn't mean it doesn't still hurt." The words landed like small stones. I didn't flinch. "I know," I said softly. "It's supposed to. Grief doesn't always look like mourning. Sometimes it looks like confusion, like resentment that can't find a place to sit, so it paces around the room looking for something to blame." Lindsay understood the truth now. That much was clear. But knowledge isn't healing. Awareness isn't peace. She had broken the picture frame, but the shards still cut her every time she tried to pick them up. She lingered for another minute, as if hoping I might stop her, beg her to stay, offer one more layer of explanation to make it easier. But I didn't. I simply stepped forward, brushing a leaf from her coat. "You'll take care of yourself?" "I'm trying," she said. "Then that's enough." She looked at me then, eyes glossy but dry. "I don't know how to be around you," she said. "You're not the mother I thought I hated. You're not the villain. And somehow, that makes it harder." I nodded slowly. "You grew up building a fortress around your pain," I said. "I was just the closest thing to aim at. I don't want to hate you anymore." "You don't have to love me either," I said. "Not now. Not ever. That's your choice." She didn't respond. She walked around to the driver's side, opened the door, then paused. Madeline sat in the passenger's seat, earbuds in, gaze low, pretending not to listen. Lindsay turned back toward me, eyes narrowed with something like guilt or uncertainty. "Maybe we need space," she said. "Time. Maybe someday we'll figure it out." "Maybe," I said. She hesitated. "Do you think you'll still be here?" I smiled. "As long as I can be." She looked away quickly, as if the softness unsettled her. Then she got in the car and drove away. The house felt bigger after that. Not empty, just wider. The silence no longer pressed down on me like it used to. It gave me room to breathe, to think, to sit with my thoughts without having to defend them. I kept the folder, the one with James's confessions, the notarized will, the truth we bled for in the nightstand drawer, beneath a box of old photographs and a bundle of thank you cards from Ellie's class. Some nights, I'd pull it out and flip through it, not because I doubted what happened, but because memory is a tricky thing. It bends. It softens the edges of pain until you wonder if you imagined the worst of it. But then I'd read the last page, James's letter, the one where he wrote, in his own crooked hand, if I could go back, I would beg her forgiveness before the bruises ever faded. She saved our son. She saved me in a way I didn't deserve. But I blamed her for everything because I couldn't face what I'd become. This is my confession. Not because it changes anything, but because it's all I have left to offer. Even now, it twisted something in me, because I had once loved that man, and hated him, and feared him, and pitted him. And now I just accepted him. And that was enough. Lindsay sent occasional texts, brief updates, a forwarded photo of Madeline at her debate final, a question about a pasta recipe. Once, a single line that said, "Thinking of you today. Don't know why. Just am." She never signed them, never added emojis, never asked how I was. But she sent them, and I responded, sparingly, because I understood something now, something I had never been able to see before. Lindsay and I had traveled the same road, but in opposite directions. I had walked it to survive. She had walked it to make sense of me. And though we met again at the crossroads of truth, we were not meant to live side by side. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That realization didn't break me. It freed me. To stop chasing. To stop convincing. To stop bleeding for something that wasn't ready to be held. I still loved her. God, I loved her with a mother's ache, deep and stubborn. But I loved her from a distance now, from a place where I could breathe. And maybe, with time, she'd find her own breath too. Until then, I would not ask her to be more than what she could give. And if one day she returned whole, scarred, or somewhere in between, I would open the door. Not because I waited, but because that's what mothers do. There are different kinds of silence. There's the silence that punishes. The kind you endure in a tense room where love has gone stale and words are wielded like knives, withheld like rations. Then there's the silence that follows an ending raw, echoing heavy. Like the space left behind when someone slams the door and doesn't look back. But the silence I live with now? It's none of those. It's soft, gentle, almost sacred. Like the hush that falls over a chapel after everyone has gone. Or the stillness in a field when the wind stops just long enough for the world to listen to itself. This silence doesn't accuse. It lets me be. The sun rises differently now. Or maybe I just notice it more. The light spills in through the curtains around 6, brushing the wooden floor with honey. It lands on the rocking chair by the window, the one James once threatened to toss because it squeaked too much. I kept it anyway, sanded the arms, restuffed the cushion. Now it's my morning seat, my quiet throne. I sit with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, a cup of tea warming my hands, and the weight of nothing pressing on me. No waiting, no explaining, no hoping for a knock that may never come. I stopped counting the days since Lindsay left. It doesn't matter anymore. Some people keep time like a prison sentence, marking each day with a tally scratched into the wall. But I don't. Not anymore. She's out there, living her life the best way she knows how. I don't know if she thinks of me, if she still blames me on the hard days, if she ever wonders whether forgiveness could feel like coming home. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. It's not mine to carry anymore. I've made peace with the idea that some people only heal in solitude. Lindsay isn't a villain. She's a woman who inherited a version of love that taught her loyalty was synonymous with blindness, and that trust only existed where denial lived comfortably. She wanted a father who was perfect. And when he died, she needed someone to blame for the cracks in that illusion. That someone was me. I understand it now. All of it. And more importantly, I forgive it. Even if she never says the words. The days are slow, but not lonely. Nathan still comes by on Sundays, sometimes with groceries I didn't ask for, sometimes with nothing but his presence and a quiet smile. He never asks about his sister. Not directly. But sometimes I see the question flicker across his face like a passing cloud. I answer it in my own way, by hugging him a little longer, asking how work is, praising the children louder than necessary. He knows. And he respects my silence. Ellie comes with her sketchbook every Friday after school. She sits in the sunroom now, her long legs tucked underneath her, pencils scratching across paper as she draws scenes from around the house, the chipped teapot, the way sunlight lands on the floor, my hands folded in my lap. She doesn't speak much while she draws. But when she does, it's always something that surprises me. "Do you think Grandma loved you?" she asked last week, out of nowhere. I had to think about it. Not because I didn't know, but because I had never been asked before. "Yes," I said finally. In her way, Ellie nodded. "Do you love Mom?" I didn't hesitate. "I always will." She looked back at her drawing. "She doesn't come around much." "I know. Are you sad?" I took a long breath. "I used to be. Now I'm just still." She nodded again, like she understood more than most adults ever do. And she went back to drawing. Sean, of course, bursts into the house like a windstorm whenever he visits. He fills every room with words and questions and half-baked inventions. Last week, he tried to install a homemade doorbell that played the opening theme from Star Wars. It shorted out the porch light. He apologized profusely while promising a better version next time. "I wanted to play music and tell jokes," he said, brushing sawdust off his shirt. "Just don't electrocute yourself," I warned. "I Googled everything this time," he grinned. And I laughed. And it felt good to laugh. In the evenings, I walk. The air smells like damp soil and pine, and sometimes I catch the scent of jasmine from the neighbor's fence. The gravel crunches beneath my boots, and the sky shifts in colors that never repeat: pale lavender, bruised indigo, tangerine gold. I pass the same mailbox every night with the same little flag that's always up, even though no one ever collects the letters. It comforts me in a strange way. Some things are predictable. Some things just are. The nights are still. I light a candle. I pour a single glass of wine. I read pages I've read 100 times before. Sometimes I pick up James's letter, not because I need to remember what he did, but because it reminds me what I survived. There's a difference. I sleep better now. No longer with my body curled defensively. No longer bracing for the next accusation, the next cold silence, the next blow that will come not with fists, but with memory. I rest, deeply, because I've made peace with my story. Even the parts no one else ever tried to understand. Especially those. Some days I still miss her. That will never stop, I think. But I no longer hope for the call, or the knock, or the letter that says, "You were right and I was wrong." What I hope for now is smaller. That she's safe. That she's softening. That one day, when she's ready, she'll remember that I never asked to be forgiven only to be seen. And if she can't, if that moment never comes, then I will still live. With my tea, my garden, my books, my children, my breath, and the sky above me, unburdened.